I'm back! I feel great! I am full of energy! Today is the best day ever! Are you having the best day ever? I hope you met some amazing fellow women in business. Now it's time for our second panel, real life advice and experiences for female leaders looking to take their career to the next level. I'll be moderating this panel discussion with three amazing female leaders. We have Nakesha Lopez. She's the Chief HR Officer at Baylor Scott & White Health. Deborah West, the ITX Group Manager of Enterprise Delivery at Toyota Motor North America. And Vickie Yakunin, Dallas Senior Manager of External Affairs for Amazon. Let's meet them. Hello, panelists.
Hello.
Hello.
Wonderful. I think I can hear you guys have joined me. We had, in our previous panel, we did have some issues with us talking over each other. That is going to happen this time. We just need to go with it. And so don't worry, if you interrupt someone else, it's just the virtual panel. We're going to start by letting you guys introduce yourselves, tell us a little about you, and then also tell us what is your superpower. So, Nakesha, could you let us know what you do, who you are, and what is your women in business superpower?
My name is Nakesha Lopez, and I'm the CHRO for Baylor Scott & White Health. I've been with the organization for 7 years, and my superpower is navigating complex issues.
Okay, I will take that away. I'm Vickie Yakunin. I am the External Affairs Lead for Amazon here in the Dallas-Fort Worth community. It's nice to be here. Rebecca, thank you for having us. And I am responsible for working with nonprofit partners, chambers of commerce, and civic groups in my role. I think my superpower is honesty, just having the ability to have direct and frank conversations and to offer constructive feedback. I think this helps business and certainly raises the skill set and the output of everyone on the team.
It very much plays into being honest. Deborah, if you could let us know who you are, what you do, and what is your superpower?
Great. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. My name's Debbie West, and I've been in the IT industry for over 30 years and working with Toyota for over 20 years. And I've held almost every kind of job in IT, from developer to architecture to program management and servant leadership. But today I come here to talk to you guys about women in business and my superpower. I had to ask my husband. So he said he was continuously surprised about how I seek to find the best qualities of people. When I was a coder, in my beginning of my career, I worked with a person I actually couldn't stand to be around. I didn't know what to do, but I had to work with him. So I kept after it, my patience and tenacity. And then I learned about how he loved his dog. And so I kept that in my mind. And every time I talked to him, I thought about his cute dog in the back of my mind. And that kind of rewired my brain. And so for the past, if you kind of fast forward through the past 30 years, I've become really good at finding the best in people and working with them to help their best qualities shine.
That is a beautiful superpower and so important, because you can get stuck focusing on the negative or you can get stuck focusing on the positive. So let's focus on the good in people and help them improve. So I just wanted to remind everyone at home, we have this incredible panel of women, and if you have questions for them, please type them in the chat and we will make sure we ask them. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead with some of our pre-prepared questions. Nakesha, in the C-suite, only 1 in 5 executives are women. There's been a lot of discussion on why. To what extent do you feel women are responsible for holding themselves back?
This is a question that I've wrestled with a lot in my life, but I do think there's a lot of studies that talk about how women experience things like imposter syndrome, and they allow that to affect our ability to go for opportunities because we feel that we must have every single experience, we need to have every single skill set on a job before we would apply for that job or raise our hand to be promoted for that job or even advocate for ourselves. And the reality is, our male counterparts, they do not. And so, I think really wrestling with that imposter syndrome is key. I think many times we're our own obstacle. And for me, what I've found in my career and my development and my growth is that you just have to go for it. I mean, you have many times we have many skills that are translatable to many areas, and you can bring those experiences and drive value. So it's really how do we have the confidence in ourselves, and how do we have mentors and folks around us that help us with that.
It's absolutely right. Do any of our other panelists have anything to add to that? I do want to let you guys know, feel free to jump in at any moment if you did want to add to a question.
Sure, I can add to that. I would just add that I think as a woman, it's really important to identify a mentor or a champion, within your workplace that can help you steward your career and help you grow your career to where you want to be. And I think something that I have seen often is that, someone hasn't taken the time to identify who that person is or to really build a relationship with a mentor that can help them do that.
That's absolutely true. In our previous panel, we had a lot of conversation regarding sponsors and making sure if you can get a sponsor in the workplace as well as a mentor. Vickie, what can women do to get over the fear of failure that so often stops us from reaching out for those opportunities that our male counterparts, if we're honest, don't even think twice about grabbing?
Yeah, I think I think it's just shifting your mindset, right, and reminding yourself that you've done the work and that you are capable and that you are able to grow your career and move on to that next spot, right? And one of the things that helps me sort of visualize this and remind myself is just looking back at past performance reviews, looking back at goals that I've set for myself. At pretty much every company I've ever worked for, we've had goals every year, right? And we're evaluated on those goals. And seeing former bosses say, exceeding expectations in, various areas, I think is a really good reminder that, we are capable. We are ready for that next role. So that's something that has helped me. And I also think, fear obviously is powerful. But I think it's also important to remember that it's okay to fail. It's what you learn from that experience, that helps you inform future decisions, right? So we shouldn't be afraid to fail. That's part of every career. I've certainly had several throughout mine.
That's so true. We shouldn't be afraid of failure because guess what? If you fail, so what? You tried, and that's what's important. What's the worst that could happen? You fail. Move on. Learn from it.
That's kind of how
Deborah.
I think about it.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, that's kind of how I think about it. Is maybe we should fail more often. I look at it, when you fail, you get a chance to seek feedback, you get a chance to improve. And I kind of look at it as a process overall, right? I live the concept of agile with short 2-week sprints. And every 2 weeks, we look at what we do. We take a sprint review, we understand what we did, we conduct a retrospective, right? We reflect on what happened. Sometimes we laugh, sometimes we cry, like, oh, I can't believe I did that. But then we pick one thing every 2 weeks, every sprint to think about and improve. And so that constant discussion gets it a lot more easier to try things, to fail fast, and then reflect and improve. So I think if we think about it more of a process, not like a big thing that happened, that it's just part of life, right? Sometimes you fail, sometimes you succeed, you figure out what to do to improve, and then you reflect, and then improve.
So true. Reminds me of a great quote from Nelson Mandela, I think it was, who said, it might not have been from him. But anyway, the quote is, I never lose. I either win or learn. So same with failure. You either win or you learn.
That's the cognitive reframing, right? You're reframing this concept of failure.
Exactly. Own it. So Deborah, how do you stay focused on your goals? You mentioned goals, and what motivates you to keep striving through challenging times?
That's a great question. So I'm super specific about it. And I think we mentioned, right, every company has a framework for that. And so I use a framework. I make sure that each of my teams have roadmaps, 3-year roadmaps, what are they going to look at in the long term? And I roll that up into a roadmap for myself. And then each year we look at that midterm plan and we create annual set of objectives. And then those annual set of objectives help me think about my own goals, right? And my own goals, I think about what am I going to deliver? What are my soft skills? What am I going to do to develop other people and to develop myself? So every year I take a look at those 3 things. How am I delivering things like this year, COVID response or continuous planning? And what are my soft skills? Oh, I need to focus on my value delivery, making sure that I'm focused on value. And then how am I mentoring and developing other people as well as myself? So I craft them through my strengths, being a change agent, being a learner, being an agile leader. So I craft my goals using my strengths and make sure that, again, I look at those every 2 weeks in my sprints with my team and with my manager and with my mentors. So it's a continuous process to look from the long range all the way to what am I doing today to help make those goals.
Can I add an exclamation point to that? I think sometimes you develop your goals. If you're not going back and constantly looking at them and the progress you're making towards those goals, you will lose focus. So you need to keep the focus on them. Keep those goals out there. Have a regular cadence of review to talk about the progress you're making towards those goals or evaluating the progress towards those goals. What are the obstacles? Reflect on the experience. And so you have to keep that in front and center.
That's a really good point.
Really, really great advice. Yeah, right? It's an excellent point. Nakesha, obviously with Baylor Scott & White, so that's healthcare. And what has been your biggest professional takeaway from the COVID working environment? Obviously from a corporate and obviously an in-hospital learnings.
Well, I have a lot of them. But there's so much new learning that has occurred during that time, especially in healthcare, and I'm sure in multiple industries. But I think if I really reflect on how we've been able to progress through such a challenging time with the demand that we've had in the last 18 months, it really has been the ability to be agile and make quicker decisions. And part of that is really establishing and understanding what are no regret moves that require less bureaucracy and just go ahead and get it done and move it forward. And then what are the things that, okay, maybe it may need some more time to percolate and thinking, but you still have to move quickly. So the idea generation to solve a particular problem means pulling enough cross-functional folks together to solution quickly, escalate quickly, and get it out there quickly. There was no time to really spend time really proving out an ROI. And that's okay. Sometimes it's okay.
So good to remember. It's okay. It is literally okay. I have a question from Holly, who's in our audience. She asks, Debbie, how do you help inspire girls and women to take on STEM jobs?
Well, that's a great question. At Toyota, we have a STEM women's organization that we developed just in the past couple of years. And so we work on both internal STEM recognition and external development of girls in the community. So we have done things within Toyota, like every quarter we share roles and jobs so women understand more about what the jobs are that people actually do in STEM inside of Toyota. In case they want to apply, right? So they don't get that imposter syndrome that we talked about. And then also we work with girls in the community. So we had a strong connection with UT Dallas, for example, where we've had sessions with them. I've spoken to groups there, and we've done hackathons with them so that we could connect what they're doing into Toyota and provide opportunities, internships, and job opportunities. So I think two ways: connecting with the community, with the girls and women in the community, and then also showing what STEM does. I like to say STEM is one of my passions. My whole family is STEM. So from science with my daughter, from technology for me, from engineering for my husband, and mathematics from my son. So we're quite a STEM family here. So it's a huge passion for me.
Thank you, Debbie. We have another question from the audience. This is from Kelly, and she asks, if you could look back to your 22-year-old self, what career advice would you give yourself? And it's not directed at anyone specific, so let's start with Vickie.
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important very early in your career is to raise your hand for all the opportunities that come your way. So you might not know about, the work in operations, right? If you have a job in PR, but, spend some time, raise your hand and go and learn, because that will make you more marketable down the road. It will make you more knowledgeable about the industry that you're working in. I think it's really important that when you're young to really be open to a lot of different opportunities within industry so that you can have a more rounded, more well-rounded knowledge of the industry that you're in.
I think raising your hand is a great piece of advice. Nakesha, is there anything that you would tell? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say what Vickie said. I would say that is probably one of the top pieces of advice I would give any young woman in their career. Nothing is raise your hand, experience everything. It helps. It really helps. But a second thing to add to that list, I do think having a mentor is important. And I think there are experiences that your mentors may have that will help you navigate some complex issues as you develop in your career and navigate your career. So really spend the time to really reach out and establish networks and meet mentors and spend time with your mentor. I think it really it helps your career over time.
Debbie, did you have something to add?
Well, I think those are really great points. Right, volunteering for things was really helpful to me early in my career. Volunteering to do things like this, work in women's organizations. I started a women's organization when I was early in my career. And I think having mentors is also really important. And I think having a little bit of patience as well, that is good, right? So you're not going to have everything right at once. And so I think doing these things, volunteering and also getting mentors helps you through the way. So I think those are really good, important ideas.
Mm-hmm. I really agree. I have a great question, and this is from Lindsay, and it is, Any book recommendations for new or aspiring leaders? And so we'll just go through all three of you, and if you have 2 to 3 book recommendations, we would love to hear them. So let's start with Vickie.
One of my favorite books is Decisive by Chip and Dan Heath. I think it's a great book to help you through the decision-making process, right? I think maybe early in your career and even maybe mid-career, sometimes we struggle with decision-making and, moving quickly, because business these days moves very, very quickly. And so that book was really helpful to me in sort of giving me some practical tips around decision-making and how to move forward quickly. What were the consequences if maybe the decision wasn't the right one, right? And how I could come back from that. So it's a good book, Decisive, Chip and Dan Heath. Definitely recommend it.
Nakesha, do you have a book recommendation?
Sure. I think one book that I found very helpful is The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You. I can't remember the name of the author, but I'm sure you guys can Google it and find it. But I think part of that is really what is around this aspect of selling yourself and stepping out of that imposter syndrome. And I think it's a lot of women have that, and so it's really, really good to help you with that. Really wrestle with and position yourself effectively in the future.
I'm going to definitely add that one to my list. The most important woman in the room is you.
The most powerful.
Do you have a book recommendation you'd like to let us know?
Yeah.
Powerful. I love it. The most powerful woman in the room is you. Thanks for correcting me.
That's great. Yeah, I think, I imagine if any of you have been in an interview recently, they've asked you about how you handle conflict, or tell me about a time when you had a difficult conversation to have. And so 2 of my favorite books that have been powerful my whole career have been The 1 Minute Manager and Crucial Conversations. They're both great books and great concepts about when you have to have a difficult conversation with somebody, what do you need to think about and what do you want to get out of the conversation, right? You don't have to belabor that difficult moment. You want to talk about it quickly and carefully and make sure that you really understand what you want to get out of it, right? You don't have to belabor how terrible somebody was at something, but how do you move forward and how do you talk about how to improve and move forward with that without hurting the person. So I think those were really 2 powerful books for me, The 1 Minute Manager and Crucial Conversations.
Debbie, I've actually read both of those books and I could not agree more. They are excellent. And one other book from me would be The Happiness Advantage. It is not a business book per se, but the premise of that book is that rather than leading your life thinking, I will be happy when I succeed, or I will be happy when I get a promotion, you need to fit a bit around and be happy, and happiness leads to success. And the book gives you 7 strategies to manifest that happiness in your life. So love to make sure everyone reads that book too, The Happiness Advantage. Back to work-life balance. So Debbie, how do you maintain a healthy work-life balance, and is there such a thing?
That's a great question. I think a lot of people ask that nowadays, right? Is it really a balance, like one or the other? And I think they're intertwined. And also in some areas you need to keep them separate. So finding a company or a group of people that or extra activities even at your company that really support your core values help me connect both my work and my life. Toyota's core values are respect for people and continuous improvement, and that really aligns with my core values of ways of working. And so the way I look at it is I want to grow and learn. I'm interested in tech and innovation, and also teamwork and family. So I'm settled in how I think, because my work and my life have the same core values. But then I also need to separate them and do things like prioritize family time, right? I have to be deliberate about that. I have to figure out what's our family schedule and make sure I take those and schedule those days off, not waiting until the last minute to figure out, okay, well, this is Columbus Day and the kids are out of school, or Thanksgiving, my kids are in graduate school, so they're going to be able to be here. So maybe I better take all of Thanksgiving week off and just schedule that well in advance, so I'm not stressed out about it and not trying to manage that, more real time. So look ahead, prioritize your family time, and find the support to help you do that.
Vickie, on the same topic of balance, in what ways do you invest in you?
Absolutely, that's a great question. At Amazon, one of our leadership principles is learn and be curious. So it's definitely a learning environment, and the philosophy is really leaders are never done learning, if you will. And so, when I think about investing in my own growth, I look at participating in conferences. Maybe I'm reading, a business publication, whether it be a book or a magazine that is, related to the work that I do, and can give me some thought on different ways to do my job and to continue to grow. Also, for me, I think a third way that I continue the learning process is really by talking with my colleagues. I work with some really truly brilliant people. I'm very fortunate in that regard. And if I ever have a question, I know that I can call a colleague and have a 15 or 30-minute conversation and learn everything I need to, or at least what I need to know in that moment on that topic. So I think there's multiple ways that you can continue to invest in your professional development in different stages of your career, right? So for me, I think those are pretty much the three areas now that I focus on.
Wonderful. Thank you, Vickie. Nakesha, saying no is an essential life skill. What ways have you learned to do that?
I think I often leverage choices. And I've done it in two ways. The first way, if it's a particular answer to a problem statement or a question, and the person's already coming with a preconceived notion of a solution that I don't believe that we know is not going to work, I navigate the question around, I don't think this is the right solution, but here's how I think we can still get there. So we can talk through or collaborate with whomever on other solutions to get to the same end goal. The key piece of that is being aligned on what is the problem we're trying to solve to begin with, and what's the ultimate experience we're trying to achieve at the end. That's the two pieces of important data to concentrate on initially. How we get there may have multiple options and not the initial option that we started with. The second way I would say that options come into play is oftentimes you're asked to do this and that and multiple things. And instead of saying, no, I can't do it, I put it back on the individual and I'll say, we have a number of priorities. Here are the priorities that are in progress, including this. Where do you see this priority falling? And that sometimes helps disarm the conversation and takes it away from it being a no situation. The person may come to a solution themselves and say, you know what, these other things are truly the priorities, continue to focus on that. So I think it's very contextual. It's rarely that I have to say no, because if I have to say no, there's still an avenue to get to whatever the root of the issue, but through another mechanism.
What an intelligent way of approaching the problem. I never thought of that. Vickie and Deborah, do you have anything to add to that?
I think I would just add that, the context is critical, right? And so when I have to say no, it comes down to, time management and prioritizing. And I think it's important to explain the why in that no, right? And to be able to clearly communicate that so that someone understands where that no is coming from. And I'll just share one recent example. I have been on a board for the last 6 years, and the organization recently asked for me to stay on. And, I had to decline because I am taking on a couple of new opportunities next year. And so, certainly I explained the why, right? Why am I declining? This is such a great organization. I've learned so much. But in terms of the available hours during the day and some additional new responsibilities that have been added to my plate, I'll no longer be able to serve as a board member, but can, certainly volunteer in different capacities. So I think as long as you explain the why, and you're clear and you're tactful and you're kind in that discussion, then that makes it a little bit easier when you have to say no.
It really brings it back to, again, clear is kind. And it also reminds me of the fact someone said to me once, it's not that you don't have enough time, it's that you're choosing that thing isn't a priority for you. So it's really all about choosing your priorities and saying no to something in a clear and kind way when it isn't your priority. Vickie, what is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Yeah, so I think it's two things really. One is very simple, just do the right thing always, right? Treat others as I would want to be treated. Certainly communicate effectively, be kind to others, be generous with my time, right? So just showing up in a good, positive way for someone else or for a community organization, for me is critical. And then I think the second thing, and I just talked about this briefly, is to, I had a leader once share with me that, it's just critical to explain why, right? If we're rolling out a new program or a new policy, and the team is not on board, well, they're not on board because we haven't given them enough information to get on board, right? And so I've learned throughout my career when I've managed teams how critical it is to explain the why and to really be thorough and to be open to taking questions from team members, and to being honest and transparent in those answers.
Absolutely. And I love this question so much. So, Nakesha, would you mind answering the same question? What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Yes, I had one that Vickie had. The other I would add to the list is never ask someone to do something you're not willing to do yourself. And that's really important because it really helps you understand the character of the individual. But I think if you're going to ask your team to do certain things, but you're not willing to do it, then why would you ask your team to do it? And really unpacking that is really important. It's a motto I live by, and I hope my leaders live by. And it's really, I think, has helped me as a leader over a number of years in my career. So that's my piece of advice.
I think that is a beautiful piece of advice, and it's something that I've also heard before, and I always keep in the back of my mind when I'm asking someone to do something. Deborah, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I think this is a great question. I'll go back to, when I was working on starting up a women's organization, and we were building it brand new, and there was a lot going. I was really invested. And my mentor told me, now, Debbie, you're not going to be doing this forever. So you have to, and I was young and I thought, well, that's what you do, right? You start a women's organization and then you do it. And she said, you need to make sure that you're building the people up so that you can step down and others can take your place. And, to kind of be able to work your way out of this job. And I've thought about that a lot as my career progressed, and making sure that anything that I'm building that will be able to be taken over by someone else. And so we talk about, how women don't get to the C-suite or how we don't apply for jobs. And a lot of times we feel very comfortable or safe in what we're doing. And by deliberately thinking about that and making sure that other people can take over what you do, that it's clear about what you do and it's open and transparent, I think that really helped me in all of my positions that I've held over time.
I think that's a great piece of advice, and it really applies as well to entrepreneurs, female, male, of all kinds, because ultimately when you're working to build a business, as well as if you're working in a corporate position, you do want your business to continue, and so you need to think about someone else needs to take over what I'm doing at some point in the future. Nakesha, what's your personal brand and how do you nurture it?
This is a good one. What is my personal brand? I think my brand is a woman leader who spends time coaching her team and her leadership team to excel. I think that's important because of the fact that I think it's a key piece of a leader's job every single day. And I think strong leadership is critical to the success of an organization and an organization's success. So I spend a lot of time investing in that component of my brand, my leadership brand, and how I can help coach other leaders as well on that. And I think it's critical to, again, I really tie that not just for the ROI for the individuals that you're coaching, but I connect that to how that can really impact your organization's success.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Deborah, do you ever use visualization? And if so, how and what advice do you have for others looking to start that habit?
I love this question. I use visualization all the time. And it especially helped me when I was living in Japan, because maybe that's all I could do was draw pictures sometimes. But I think there's two kinds. There's the kind of a little bit more day-to-day business focused. And so visualizing your work, visualizing what you do through story maps, milestone charts, histograms with targets. I think all of that helps people really understand what you do, what you've accomplished, and what your impediments are. And I think so the kind of visualizing your work is really important. And the second thing that I think is really important is from a visualization perspective is how do you facilitate workshops and discussions and meetings in a visual way, not just in a verbal way. So I took a class a few years ago on learning how to draw, which might sound strange, but we practiced our letters, our numbers, they taught me how to draw people, they taught me how to draw images, and how to use that in the facilitation of workshops to make it more interesting and more specific and easier for people to absorb. So I think both kinds of ways I think are really important because people really can connect with visual representations of what happens, especially at a global company when people speak all different languages, and English often is their second language. So using the visual techniques, both in terms of data and also in terms of facilitation meetings, are really important.
That's actually a really interesting answer. Sometimes I think that visualization can be a little bit, wishy-washy, but you've made it really concrete, and it's interesting to see how a global organization is using that. Vickie, I'm kind of curious if Amazon encourages visualization and how you might have used that.
So I am familiar with it, but it isn't something that I personally use. But I've got a couple of quotes that sit prominently here on my desk that I sort of remind me of what I need to be focused on, right? And so one of them is, whatever you are not changing, you are choosing. So, if there's a certain end state that I'm looking to get to, change may have to be in place in order to sort of get to that end state. And the second is courage is the power to let go of the familiar. And so that is a good reminder for me that, it's important and okay to step out of the comfort zone on a daily basis, right? Because that's where, that's where the good stuff happens, right? That's where you stretch yourself. Maybe it's a stretch goal that you're working towards, and you sort of have in your mind what it looks like, right, in the end state. But in order to get there, you really need to step outside of your comfort zone to do that.
That is absolutely true. I love that. So the first one was whatever you are not changing, you are choosing. And could you tell me the second one again?
Yes, courage is the power to let go of the familiar.
Courage is the power to let go of the familiar. Those are incredible. Thank you for sharing, Vickie. Nakesha, what is a recurring hurdle for you? Be that time, money, attitude, location, knowledge, and what are some strategies that you're using to overcome those?
Time. Absolutely time. And I think there is competing priorities, new priorities, and tons of meetings on the calendar. And you're often feeling like there's not enough time in the day to spend time focused on strategy, to spend time actually problem solving. And so that's been a big hurdle for me, especially over the last 18 months in the time of COVID. But I have to be really intentional more and more about saying no to certain meetings and understanding that I don't need to be in everything because I do need the time to focus on some key priorities. And so I'm really intentional every week, every couple of days, reviewing what I have ahead of me. What do I need to be in? Delegating things to my team that is appropriate so that I have enough time to be able to deliver on the key aspects of my role.
I feel like time is a recurring problem for everyone. Debbie, I'm wondering if you have any advice for women who are struggling with time management.
It's really difficult to manage all. I have many meetings, 3 meetings at the same time, back-to-back half-hour meetings all day long. So it's you have to be really deliberate about how you handle this. And I think Nakesha, talked about it a little bit, but I schedule deliberately. I schedule time to work on strategy. I schedule blocks of time so that I can have to myself or with another person to really think and make sure that I have thinking time. I also schedule time to answer emails, and I schedule time to, this is going to sound ridiculous, but you can see why I'm a program manager, but I schedule time to answer emails. I schedule time to work on my time. So I schedule time to work on my calendar and, like you said, prepare for meetings in advance. But I have to be super deliberate because it's really hard to get kind of that out of that half-hour meeting all day long rat race, I guess is the best way to say it.
You're absolutely right. I think one of the best pieces of advice I've ever received was that a to-do list is actually a things that are not going to get done list, and that if you want to get things done, put it on your calendar. That is how you manage your time and you actually get things done. It sounds like you use that same system.
Yeah, that's great.
Right? It's so true. Although I've never thought to schedule time to plan my calendar, so now I'm going to add that in. Thank you. So a quick question for everyone, because I just love this question. I think it will wrap up the panel really nicely. So we'll start with Nakesha. What failure was your biggest learning experience?
Um, well, I've had failures in my career, and I feel like every single failure is a learning experience. I think one of the biggest ones I've made is happened in the last 18 months, and and that was around something that we were looking at, a recommendation we were making that we looked, at the quantitative data significantly, and it proved the case for the particular recommendation. What we didn't do enough of a good enough job on is really spending time understanding the qualitative data, so getting insights from our operators around the implications of the decision. And so when we rolled it out, there were a number of folks who thought it was a great recommendation, and there were a number of folks who did not. But if we had taken the time to really understand that beforehand, we could have anticipated those obstacles and addressed them as part of the rollout. So I would say my biggest piece of learning and advice is data matters. Distrust the data, challenge the data, but look at both the quantitative and the qualitative.
I think that's really great advice, guys. Trust the data, but don't trust the data, and look at it from lots of different angles. Vickie, what failure was your biggest learning experience?
Yeah, I think for me, it sort of goes back to what Nakesha was just talking about in terms of data. This was in a previous role with a different organization. We had done an event for many years, actually many decades of fundraising event, and I had built the case using data that really showed that we could still do a fundraising event that was much more cost effective, that would reduce the amount of staff time that was necessary for this event, right? And sort of presented this business case that, really would offer some solutions and take us in a different direction. But, still work with the organization, still have a fundraising event, and still, reach those goals that we had in place. And so, after presenting the data, and sharing the business case, it really wasn't that well received, right? And it was like, well, we've, been doing this event for decades, and this is what we do, and so some of that decision making was based on sort of, a feeling, right? A feeling about an event. And as hard as I tried, and as much as I put forth what I thought was a convincing business case, I ultimately failed. And so what I learned from that experience was that for me personally, it's important for me to work for an organization that does look at the data, that does look at the business case, that is open to reimagining events and doing things in a different way. And that I needed to work for leaders who sort of embraced that thinking. And so yes, that was certainly learned a lot in that experience about both myself, about the organization, and about the leaders that I worked with.
Thank you. And ultimately, that we have to fail in order to learn and move forward. Well, ladies, that brings us to the end of our panel. Thank you so much to all three of you for joining us. I know that you're all very busy, and so we so appreciate you taking the time out of the day to say yes to the local profile panel. Thank you.